Hey everyone, welcome to Informed Dissent, a news podcast that brings you dispatches from the gender culture war. I am Ben Appel, the author of Cis White Gay, The Making of a Gender Heretic, out November 4th, and I'm here with a gentleman of trans experience, Corey Cohn. Our compatriots are missing in action, are MIA today. Other things going on, so it is Corey and I steering the ship. uh, Corey's the captain. I'm the co-captain. I'm the skipper. All right. So first, hey Corey, how are you?
Doing good. Carry on,
Okay.
Skipper.
So headlines. Let's talk about a couple headlines first. Just a few of them here. Alaska Public Media is reporting that the Alaska State Medical Board took the first step Friday toward restricting access to gender-affirming care for minors in the state. In a unanimous vote, the board passed a draft regulation that would allow medical providers to be sanctioned by the board for providing the care and would put their licenses at risk. And the draft will be open for further public comment for 30 days after it's reviewed by the state law department. I don't know if that's happened before, Corey, where, we're talking about all these bans and legislatures banning
Mhm.
gender, quote unquote, gender affirming care. A state medical board stepping in.
Yeah. Well,
With
I think something similar happened in Florida a couple of years ago. Their state medical board had some opinions on um, whether or not doctors should be providing this sort of care, or whether it should be provided by the state. And I think that there was some information about that.
Got it. Okay. But was it
Yeah.
was it the Florida legislature that ultimately outlawed it, or was it
No,
DeSantis, or you think it was the medical
I,
board? We'll have to look that
I
up.
think it was the medical board.
Okay, we'll look that up. I'll put that in the show notes. Okay. CNN was reporting. This is just a little anecdote, but I just thought it was interesting. Sierra Watkin, 21 years old, is a trans woman. Performed sex acts on a man who is also 21, who she had met on social media, on Snapchat in June 2022. She did not disclose her transgender status to him. This is from CNN. She was
Mhm.
convicted of two charges of sexual assault and one charge of assault by penetration following a trial at Teesside Crown Court and will be sentenced on October 10th. This was in the UK. The Telegraph is reporting that evidence seen by the Telegraph suggests children are having online consultations with EU doctors and then flying to the continent with their parents to get injections of the maximum 6-month dose of the drugs, which were indefinitely banned across the US by West Streeting. The method and logistics of circumventing the law are being promoted by Ann Health, a private trans clinic run by Susie Green, the former chief
Oh,
executive of Mermaids, the trans charity. Our friend Susie.
our friend Susie.
The
Uh,
company is,
she's Susie Green had done some consultation with Helen Weberly, who has a scheme in Europe to provide trans health care. And I don't know if you remember, Ben, but Helen Weberly has had all sorts of legal problems, as well as her husband, who was struck off of the roles, I guess, and I don't remember the language that they use in England, but he lost his license to practice because he had given testosterone, I believe, to a young woman who was injured or died from it. So the Weberlys have been dodging the law for years to do this exact sort of thing that you're talking about. So it's no surprise to me that Susie Green, who was like this with Weberly, would be involved in offshoring trans interventions on children.
that's nuts. And also, I did not know that about Helen Weberly's. Is Helen Weberly a doctor, do you know? Or like or
Yes.
okay, and then Helen Weber, okay, so her husband. You know what's really funny is because I can occasionally see, I don't think I follow Helen Weberly on X, but I occasionally see like people posting about Helen Weberly or retweeting or whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
like mistake it for a parody account a lot. Like, you know
Yeah.
that Dame something X account that's like a parody account of like a gender doctor or something? That anyway,
Yeah,
I like
that's not a parody either. No, I'm just kidding. Keep
oh,
going.
okay,
Keep
okay,
going.
yeah. I always like mistake it for that, and Helen Weberly kind of sounds like a parody name in a way. But anyway, I just did not know that story about her and her husband. Do you know if Helen Weberly was involved with Mermaids as well? You said they're like this. She and Susie Green are like this.
Susie Green was, but I think after there was some fracas about mermaids because they had had a pedophile, convicted pedophile on their board,
Right.
and so they had had some churn. And I think Susie Green left after that, and
Well, I
then
mean,
hooked up.
for a lot of folks who are listening know what Mermaids is, know who Susie Green is. For those who
Yeah.
don't, Susie Green, she first came across my radar. Well, she started Mermaids and began Mermaids, which was the organization that supports or promotes or advocates for puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for minors and for youth,
Mm.
for trans quote unquote trans youth. And Susie has a son, Jackie, who Susie transitioned very early on. And Roberts, is it Spack?
SPAC, yeah,
Yeah,
in
in
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, she brought, as far as I know, she brought Jackie to the U.S. to attain puberty
Yes.
blockers.
Hey,
Yeah, attain
history repeats itself.
right, brought to attain puberty blockers for Jackie. So Jackie was one of the early kids, but this was in the early 2000s. This was like maybe 2006, I think, or 2005, somewhere around there. But Jackie, there's music. Where's that coming from?
There is. Let me fix that.
Okay, so and but how I first came across Susie Green, or at least kind of familiarized myself, is because Susie Green did a TED talk years ago about her story with transitioning her, quote unquote daughter, and how Jackie was always very girly and princessy, and how her husband would get upset because Jackie was really effeminate, and they tried to take away his girls' toys and correct him, and then eventually they said, "Oh, he's just really a girl," and ended up transitioning him. Anyway, Mermaids, that organization has fallen into disrepute and was uh, obviously very kind of the center of a lot of different scandals. Um, that pedophile on the board being one of them, or on
Mm.
staff being one of them, but also
Yeah.
just the way that. Go ahead.
Another scandal being that they were a lead plaintiff against the LGB Alliance having charity status, and they lost that.
Well, they lost it,
That
and I think yeah. Go ahead.
they wasted a lot of time and money, and they exposed themselves quite badly doing that. If they had just kept their mouths shut, they would probably still be okay.
Exactly. Exactly, because during the in discovery for that, when LGB Alliance applied for charity status, they flipped out and they were like, "Oh, this is an anti-trans hate group, and they should be denied this." And so they tried to overturn it. And as far as I know, this had never been done before by anyone. No, there was no like other charity that got involved and said that this charity should not be, get the status, charity status, or it should be revoked. But I think it was during discovery that a lot of those things came out about mermaids that they ended up, and I think that's what you're
Yeah.
referring to, is that they ended up shooting
Yeah.
themselves in the foot.
I'm not sure it was discovery. I think it's that the Charity Commission started to look at some complaints that were made against Mermaid as part of trying to contextualize their complaint.
Got it. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, so no surprise there that Susie Green is circumventing the law and has this new Anne Health, and is a charity, a company. It's registered in London, not regulated by a medical body. The medical staff is based abroad, and so just outsourcing puberty blockers for kids who can't get them in the UK. And then M Live is reporting, this is the last one I'll read off, is citing, and this has been reported elsewhere, but this is where I got this specific news, citing a federal subpoena and quote, escalating external threats and risks, end quote. Michigan Medicine reported it would not provide hormonal therapies or puberty blocker medications to children and teens under 19. Um, a spokesperson for the health system said so in Michigan as well. I think I saw that when I was compiling the news, there might have been an article by perhaps a writer at them, or maybe it was Aaron. No, I don't think it was Aaron Reed. Anyway, I think 21 states have um, or no, maybe it was actually forget this. I have to look at this. Maybe
Mhm.
I'll look it up. I think it was the a number how it was kind of tallying how many hospitals have discontinued or states, but I think it was maybe perhaps hospitals have discontinued puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for youth since January, since Trump came into
Mm.
office. And I hadn't seen that number, and at least oh here, at least 21 hospitals have ended or restricted trans care for minors since January. That was actually NBC News. Oh, Joe Yerkaba. I knew it was one of them. Joe
Oh
Yerkaba
yeah.
was reporting in NBC News, which is I hadn't seen that number. That's a lot of hospitals, and that's a lot, and just since January. So anyway, it's just remarkable how much a different administration can change things, and how much it's really remarkable.
Yeah, elections have consequences.
They really do. Um, okay, so this was a big week. There was a lot of there was a tragedy that occurred in Minneapolis on Wednesday morning. Um, and I'm talking about the shooting
Mm.
at the Catholic school, the small Catholic school up there, that during a mass, a trans identified male who had reportedly gone to the school. I've just seen reportedly, so I don't know what has been confirmed and what hasn't been confirmed. Shot through the windows of the church, killed two children, one aged 8 and one aged 10, and then injured, I think, about 17 others. A couple are in critical condition. I think they're all expected to survive, and then a couple elderly people were shot as well. Um, so this has obviously sparked just so much uh, conflict and drama and the whole gender discourse online and social media and mainstream media, because obviously the reaction is that this person's trans identity is the source of their insanity, or trans ideology
Mm.
is the motivator, and then you know others are saying that this is rare, and that that you can't just pin this on all trans people, and this is just part of conservatives' war against erasing trans people and so on. Corey, what did you think about this when you heard about it?
Well, I have to admit that I have been somewhat primed to expect this sort of thing to happen now, because since 2021, 2022, there have been a number of notable violent incidents involving trans identified individuals. And so my first reaction when I heard about it, I actually wrote something on social media where I had referenced the previous time that I'd noted one of these events, and I said, I'm sorry to have to reference this again. And I really didn't know very much about the shooter himself. I just heard trans identified and I had a knee jerk reaction. Um, but then, as more information came out, I really had to evaluate what was going on.
Well, what do you mean your knee-jerk reaction and what you had to evaluate?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've observed, I guess, for quite a while, but increasingly in the last couple of years, is the violent rhetoric that trans activists use to try to make their point. You can see the T-shirts that have the knives on it, where it says "Protect Trans Kids." I think the lieutenant governor is it of Michigan was notoriously photographed wearing that garb. Protect the dolls. You know, uh, different imagery of superimposing AR-15s and AK-47s over the trans flag. Like this is all over the place.
Hmm.
So when I heard about this, I was like, well, this isn't surprising because this is the type of results you get in a culture that worships violence. But as more and more information is coming out, I think it is reasonable to ask whether we should even construe this individual as trans.
Right. Well, okay, so you said a lot there. First, let me just back up for a second for people that don't know. I'm sure that a lot of people know the details of the story, but just to get a few of these details out. Robin Westman is the name of the trans-identified young male, 23, born Robert. He let's see, the Annunciation Catholic Church is where he shot into at the school at the Annunciation Catholic Church.
Yeah.
His mother, Mary Grace Westman, worked in the business office of the church for 5 years before retiring in 2021. Last I heard, she actually kind of has fled the state. I think they're actually looking for her. I'm not sure. When about, I think it was 5 years ago in June, in either 2019 or 2020, is when she, because Robert was 17, I believe, at the time,
Yeah.
and Robert, wanted to change, started identifying as female and wanted to change his name to Robin, and so his mother approved, or filed for him in his name, and then a judge approved that. It's really interesting to read, like how crazy it is. There was an article on the CNN, saying this person has a violent history of writings and stuff, and then halfway through the article it says like, and then changed the name to Robin, and then the judge ruled that, quote, Robin identifies as female and wants to be recognized for who she really is, or something. Like, that's what the judge ruled. And it's just so surreal that, like, after reading all of these horrible things, like, that's the most insane part of the article, because it's like you're this troubled kid, all of these issues that he's had in the past, and suddenly and that any boy could just identify as female and you know claim that legal status, is still just the most, it will never not be bizarre, and it becomes more bizarre. It's like Black Mirror, like surreal. Anyway,
Right.
um so yeah, so he changed his name, the uh, yeah, 17
Yeah.
when he changed his name. And then so what's surfaced since then is that there were videos uploaded to YouTube. I've since been taken down, but I know you can still find them. But then there were a lot of really disturbing videos that he had posted prior to this, and then journal entries. His journals have come out, um, detailing how long he's been thinking about this. I mean, the earliest one that I was looking at was like in the beginning of July. I don't know how far back, but it also talks about how for so long he's like, for every school I had went to, I had kind of imagined shooting it up at some point. As far as I know, when he was younger, perhaps in middle school, he said to a classmate, like, what would you do if someone started shooting in here? And he ended up, I think, getting suspended from his school, and then he went to a military academy. He went to a couple different high schools. There's a lot of different reporting about this, but he was a troubled kid, and he had a history of, um, I don't know if it was homicidal ideation, but at least just a lot of mental health issues. And throughout his journals, he talks very much about being suicidal. And when he was planning this attack, he was all along planning to take himself out, and he talks about just taking out others with him, and wanting to
Yeah.
cause as much destruction as he can. He glorifies these other shooters in the journals. So yeah, so this is a big thing that happened, but the most tragic thing is that two young kids were killed, and that so many others were injured. And obviously this community up there is reeling from it. But it just talks about, especially because it was in a church and because it was a trans-identified individual, there's just so many layers to this because of how the narratives of they're coming for our kids and they're evil and they're
Yeah.
demonic and they're and now they're shooting into churches, and then there's this opportunity for Democrats to say, like, thoughts and prayers don't work, Republicans. Like, you can't just say thoughts and prayers, and then Republicans are saying, how dare you? Like, this is Christian, you're insulting Christians, this is important to
Right.
them. And then Democrats are saying the kids were literally praying when they got killed.
Right.
It's just such fodder for this whole culture war.
Right.
Uh,
Well, it lets everybody read something into it that supports one of their preconceived ideas, right? And that's what happened to me, Ben, is I have this preconceived idea that because the trans activist community is so violent, here's somebody who's has changed his name and identified as trans and shot innocent people. Ah, well, this is trans activism. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but a lot of the trans online community is like, no, this guy was detrans. He desisted. He didn't identify as trans anymore, and this supports their narrative of when people are not supported in their transition, they become despondent and violent, right? So this supports the trans view of the conservatives. They think all the trannies are crazy, and I was it Walsh that made a tweet that was something along the lines of, "This is why we need trans control, not gun control."
oh,
And
I didn't
then
see that. Matt Walsh.
and
Okay.
then there's people on the left, including, was it Gavin Newsom maybe, who said, "See, this is why we need more gun control."
Hmm.
So this event was politicized by everybody, including potentially some of our friends.
Yeah, for sure. And um, well, one, you said before, you said worships violence, a movement that worships violence or glorifies violence. I think that's what you said, right?
Yes.
Um, do they worship violence and glorify violence? I mean, or is it more like there's a they, I mean, there's more radicalized segment of that population, especially the activist population, um, glorifies being persecuted and having to, defend themselves from others.
Yeah.
I think they would argue that the violence is being inflicted towards them and that they have to take up arms to protect themselves. I Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here because you also said that, like, you were like, there's this talk about maybe he, or no, you said maybe, I just wonder, like, maybe he wasn't really trans or he wasn't a trans individual. Well, what did you mean by that?
Well, let's look a little bit towards some of the past that you brought up.
Hmm.
He has a history of violent ideation.
Hmm.
What we saw from his videos is that he had a lot of, he was a fan of mass murderers because
Right.
he wrote some of their names and symbolism on his weapons. You can see that in his videos. What was that phase where he was trans identified? What was that about? We can't ask him, but we can maybe speculate based not just on what we saw from his actions, but on the stories of a lot of trans identified young men of being outcasts, of being loners, of being losers. And there was a route for him that 6 years ago would have been right before the pandemic started. And he invested in that trans identity, as he wrote in his diary. He's sick of his hair. He wanted to chop it off. He was tired of the charade of being trans, but he felt everybody had invested in his identity, and so it was something that he couldn't let go of. Who knows? Maybe the actions that he took were his way of trying to sever himself from those commitments. But this was a young man that was not socially connected.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up about the regret, or the wanting to have not done this or whatever. In the New York Post, and I'm sure other places have reported it too, but this is where I found this as well. That's a really important point. And it says the shooter confessed he was quote, tired of being trans. And he wrote, "I wish I never brainwashed myself." It was a journal that he shared on YouTube before the shooting. He said, "I only keep," that he's talking about the long hair, quote, "I only keep it because it is pretty much my last shred of being trans. I am tired of being trans. I wish I never brainwashed myself. I can't cut my hair now as it would be embarrassing defeat, and it might be a concerning change of character that could get me reported. It just always gets in my way. I will probably chop it on the day of the attack." Um, uh, it also said that he had written on another page, quote, "I don't want to dress girly all the time, but I guess sometimes I really like it. I know I'm not a woman, but I definitely don't feel like a man," end quote. So yeah, so this is just, I mean, it's kind of classic trans identity for male youth that's awkward,
Hmm.
that's troubled, perhaps on the spectrum. I don't know if there's maybe a little, you don't think that perhaps he was on the spectrum, or maybe a little AGP mixed in there. I don't know. There's a lot of,
I don't know.
commonalities, I feel like, in this. But what I was saying, Megan Dom asked me to come and do a live stream with her about this last night. We just chatted about it, and I was saying, after looking at all of the information yesterday and compiling some of it for this newsletter that I put out for Informed Dissent for paid subscribers, I um, was thinking that, this kid had a lot of mental health issues, and he was already there. Trans was just something that he could grab at, that because that community, that identity welcomes this exact cohort of individuals who have these comorbidities, who have these mental health issues. It's something for people that are that troubled to really glom onto. And so what you were saying is that, like for you said 6 years ago he had this and he said, okay, and this is what I am. I just feel like I was saying to Megan, that there's I don't see so much difference between this kid and Dylan Klebold, who did he was one of the shooters at Columbine.
Right.
But back then there wasn't trans ideology for young people who were troubled and depressed and confused and bullied, or sad and so on, conflicted men who were struggling with young boys who were struggling with becoming men and masculinity and all of these
Uh,
things that go into it. There wasn't that to latch on to. So this is a web for, catching really, really, really troubled kids who can kind of see that trans identity can be an explanation, for why they feel the way they do, why they feel uncomfortable in their bodies, why they have these distressing thoughts. It kind of just can be explained away by something larger called, this abstract thing called dysphoria.
mm.
And that they can see that social transition, or perhaps medical transition, can be a kind of panacea for, all of these other issues that they have, right?
Yeah. I worry a little bit about the mental health framing because I feel like there's something that is true, but we don't have a very good model to describe. And without a good model, it's hard to think about certain things. But what it seems like to me for this young man and others like him is that he did not have healthy social connections. And I know that we understand if we just talk about this as a completely separate topic, but you know this, I know this, everybody knows this. The people that you hang around are the people who you become more like. You change yourself to become more like the group that you hang out with.
Well, especially when you're young.
Well, I think that this is true at every age, but let's say, sure, particularly when you're young and you're having this identity formation.
Hmm.
If my hypothesis is true, then pretty soon you'll be wearing
Yeah.
a variety of hats on the program. The the need to be connected, the pain of being alone, of not having friends or supportive family members, like that burns intensely. And it makes perfect sense to me, having gone through it myself, that that trans pathway is a pathway towards connection. It is a pathway towards making meaning, but it's ultimately empty. It has nothing to it. So it's very easy for me to imagine that a young man who's been affirmed by his mother, who's been affirmed by his family, in this empty identity, this fake facade, that that there's an initial period where the attention and the affirmation feel really good, and then there's a second period where the reward never really comes. There's a short-term reward, but the long-term reward never manifests.
Hmm.
And that enhances or magnifies the bitterness and the loneliness. And I don't see that that's a mental health issue. I think that that's an issue of a person who just doesn't have a connection to other people anymore.
Hmm. Right. Well, people talk about trans or trans activism or whatever being a cult, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that can be reductive, but in that regard, I think that it really makes me think about a cult or something being cult-like, because when you said that he gets drawn into this and thinks that it's like the community, that there's something there, but there's nothing there, that it's empty.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a lot of ways how cults operate and how they work and how they are. People, they bring in or attract people that are lost, that are troubled, that need community, that need some kind of connection. And once you get brought in, it's very like warm and all enveloping, and the solution. And then we discover really quickly that there's no there. There's nothing behind those kind eyes and those welcoming, the glitter parades and the whatever they call them, all the rainbow families and all these things, that there's a lot of dysfunction and disorder and personality disorder and conflict, and uh, certainly not confidence in identity and strength in who they are. That
Right.
there's a lot of uncertainty, and you're thinking like, oh, I can get with these people because they are so sure in who they are, and I'm so unsure in who I am. And then they
Right.
realize, oh, they are not sure of who they are either, and it's completely disorienting. But the thing
Yep.
is that, which is very much like a cult. But the other thing is that what makes it also similar to that is, I think, and this is one of the more disturbing aspects of it for a lot of people who get swept up in it, is that they can misstep so easily. So if you misspeak, if you represent trans, if in a wrong way, there's no agreement, because it's such a incoherent
Yeah.
ideology about what people actually believe. What's verboten, what's okay to believe today can be different tomorrow, and you can really
Ben,
misstep and be isolated. Go ahead.
when you were But before you became the cis white gay,
Hmm.
before you started speaking up against this type of culture, you were actually sort of near it, weren't you?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was in the middle of it essentially, but I wasn't trans-identified, but I
You
was,
weren't,
yeah.
but you would write trans affirming messages on your social media,
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and
yeah, and I was right in the middle of it, but what attracted it for me, and having grown up in essentially a cult, a fundamentalist Christian cult, a covenant community, it was what it was called. But having left that community and feeling so unmoored for so long and not having a kind of mission, a moral kind of compass, never feeling like I was like, excuse me, a good person. What
Mhm.
attracted me so much to social justice activism, especially like LGBTQ activism and so on, was the feeling of righteousness that it gave me. Like it was a community, and I felt like one of the good ones again. I felt good.
Yeah.
So that was what really enticed me about it. And I thought mistakenly that it really was this loving community. We welcome you. Everybody's welcome, all inclusive. And it was just all about like, you know, promoting gender nonconformity and difference and people can be who they are. And I entered this space and got further and further into it. And glad when I interned at Glad for a short time, that was probably one of the most eye-opening experiences. And I write about all this in my book, but you know, um, is that there was no there, or there was a there, but it was pretty much the opposite of what I had always assumed it to be, that it was extremely dogmatic,
Mhm.
and uh, and that people were confused and lost, and that what unfortunately it's like with cults, with whatever it is, with fundamentalist thought, with ideologies, with political ideologies, it becomes so much more about power and maintaining the promotion of that ideology over any substance to it, like over what is really there.
Yeah.
It's about the messaging, it's about the appearance, it's about the politics, it's about how to maneuver to
Yeah.
have power, and even just to have power in your back pocket for when you want to do something different. It's like there's no vision in so many
Right.
ways. You don't even know where this is ending up. Suddenly it's like we must have access to sports. Like males must be in this, and they're dying if they
Mhm.
don't. It's like you just don't
Right.
know what you're going to be, marching through the streets for. Kids must have their puberty
Could
blocked. You,
could I ask you, Ben?
yeah.
Because you said something that was really interesting, which is that when you were in the middle of all of this, one of the benefits for it is that you felt really self-righteous.
Mhm.
What about now?
Now, well, actually that's a really good. I do not feel that. Well, it's a really good question, and in fact, that's kind of like what my whole book is about, Corey, is like becoming a free thinker that doesn't require, feeling
Right.
good or righteous or right. I just think what I think and I do what I do, and I'm, neither here nor there. And that, whether I'm a good or bad person, I don't need that validated outside of me from a larger group or mob of people.
Yeah.
I can be an independent thinker, and
Wait, wait, wait. How do you know you're an independent thinker?
I don't.
What are your guardrails?
It's a good question. What are my guardrails for knowing that I'm an independent thinker? Well, that's a complicated question. The first thing that comes to mind, Corey, is that I was not an independent thinker for my entire life. I
Okay.
parroted I was an individual in so many regards. I was not an independent thinker. I parroted ideas that other people said, progressive ideas. Then it was, before that, it was, these religious ideas. It was always just kind of tell me what to think and how to think. And a lot of people are like this. This is so common to the human condition because it's super, 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 super overwhelming to be faced with kind of the mystery of all of this and why we're here and what we're doing, and to kind of really be like, well, what do I think? And what do I feel, and
Right.
and how do I
And
differ, and to
and
separate yourself from others.
it might be fair to say that to the extent that we are independent thinkers, it's not universal, it's in particular domains. So when it comes to something that's big and important, something that's happening that we don't have time to think about, we might just adopt the views of our friends anyway, even though we're independent thinkers.
Yes. You mean on certain
Ukraine
things?
good, Russia bad,
Right.
right?
Well, you bring up that's a really good point, because Corey, I often think to myself, good God, I don't really have convictions, because I don't really trust like I am not an economist. I'm not
Mm.
a conflict expert, a war expert. All of these things where everybody just knows suddenly. I'm always mystified and so really kind of floored. And it's actually intimidating. And I think this is why one of the reasons why people think that they need to glom onto and kind of adapt, because they think mistakenly that everybody knows so much more than them. So when they so confidently speak out and say, right when a conflict starts, this is the side that I'm on and I know this is the good side, and people feel like, oh my God, I don't even know about that conflict at all. Like, I don't know enough, but like, I know this person, I agree with them on these three other things that are really major. And so this must be, and then suddenly 3 weeks later, you're putting something in your social media about passionately about supporting or being against some cause or another. So
Yeah,
my convictions are about the truth, is about like what's real and what's true.
right.
And that's essentially kind of what I'm about. I mean, separate from that is being kind and being great, being
Yeah.
gracious and generous or forgiving or having nurturing, kind of being good and as good as I can to the people who I love and who are close and who are around me, just trying to kind of do the next right thing in each small situation so that I can just make my little difference in the world wherever I am.
Hmm.
But when it comes to the big questions, I was at a dinner party last week and everybody's talking about all these things very confidently, and they're super, super smart people. And I kind of just stopped and I said, I have to ask you guys, like, how do you trust what you're hearing anymore? And they all looked at me, they were like, that's a really good point. Like, been having this whole discussion, but we've been basing so much of our points on what has been reported elsewhere, and we don't know what anymore what we can't really be confident. So one thing that I feel confident talking about in a lot of ways is the gender topic. It's like the only thing that I feel super, because I do research and I do read and I do really get into this and I look into it and I do know what I think. But also I have an open mind. Like I again, my motivation towards the gender stuff is about the truth. Like that's what my fixation is on. It's about the truth, it's about honesty, it's about what's real. And that's what fascinates me and kind of fixates me in this regard, is because there's so much untruth and so much
Hmm.
about what's not real um, within it.
Well, I take your points. I want to go back to something else that you said that I thought was interesting also. Sorry, I have a little mental checklist.
I say so much.
Um, you had said something about making other people feel good as like part of this social justice movement. It's like uh, creating spaces where people feel affirmed and included, right? What's interesting to me, and I think that that is actually something that people do with intention, is creating that sort of accepting, inclusive, welcoming uh, space. But what I don't hear a lot about presently is character or character development or principles or conduct, right? We're sort of out of tune with the types of boundaries, or I think some of the extreme people, maybe the what are the hardcore gender criticals now called? I can't remember.
Oh yeah.
That they say bring shaming back, right? So there seems to be under the surface tension between the groups that say that we should that our duty is to make everybody feel as included as possible versus the other side of that, which is it's our duty to get people to conform to our principles as much as possible. We should be trying to get other people to develop themselves to meet our standards versus let's get rid of our standards so that we can include people.
Yeah. Ultras. I think that's what you were thinking. Is the ultras?
Ultras.
Yeah.
It it is. Um, and again,
Go
I'm
ahead.
thinking about this in context of this young man, of somebody who might have grown up in an environment, aside from the fact that he was at a Catholic school. So this is like a counterfactual here, but he might have been in an environment with his public school and his family where the message that he got all of the time was, if you're feeling bad, it's somebody else's fault. If you're not feeling included, that's because of bad people. If you're having doubts about being trans, that's because of minority stress. It's other people's fault that you're feeling bad about being trans. It's nothing that you're doing. And this might have been a human being who was plaster on the outside and empty on the inside from the very time that he was born. He might not have had anybody telling him that he needed to build himself up from the inside.
Hmm.
And I wonder, again, you know, I'm skeptical of mental health being the primary crutch that we lean on to explain these types of behaviors, because I think that there's a lot that we do toward one another to set the expectations of our own conduct or the conduct of others. I wonder if he was just somebody who an adult never sat down and said to him, this is how you have to become a mature, productive, and involved member of society. Here are the duties that you owe others, instead of here are what other people owe you. I wonder if he is somebody who never had that sort of conversation in his life.
I don't know. I'm kind of almost tempted to say that I think he probably did because he because he grew up in this, kind of attending these, as far as I know, these religious schools and these kind of
Yeah.
smaller community. I feel like it, in some regards, it probably was there because within those spaces, there is a kind of blueprint that kids are really, which can be really good in a lot of ways and really comforting and really helpful in terms of building character, is kind of just building a constitution of,
Mhm.
this is how to live and what to do. Obviously, within different religious ideologies, there can be so much, so many problems, and but then there also can be rooted in a lot of it as well. So really good things and good values that are good for kids and young people to grow up learning and understanding, to build that kind of constitution that I think you're talking about. So my inclination is that maybe he did. Um, I don't know. I mean, you said, but Corey, you said earlier, and I this is popping into my head again and again because I wanted to make sure that, you're like, it's unfortunate because that this has to happen and that I have to bring this up again. Like it's expected. Like it's not really a shock. One, because shootings are becoming more commonplace, or they seem to be becoming more commonplace, because we hear about them so much. But just with in terms of a movement that you said worships or glorifies violence, or where violence is part of the imagery so much. I mean, this young man notably had in one of his notebooks a sticker that was the progress, pride flag
Hmm.
with a machine gun, with an AR-15 or whatever they are, on it, saying something like protect trans people, or whatever that the saying was. And yeah, that's nuts. I mean, we become kind of inured to these things, but I think that with a lot of things of what's happening now in terms of the fringes on both the left and the right, or the fringes in like the whatever the left is, but whether it's this huge kind of whether it's Trantifa, Antifa, the trans, the whatever it is, all these things, um, the more it's very this postmodern element to it of like the more outside the box and the more radical you are, the more radical the idea, the more it kind of goes against or contradicts what we all know to be true and normal. It's more the more acceptable it is. It's like nothing can be too radical, you know? And I think there's like a lot, maybe there can be things that are too radical, but there's people that it's a very weird, it's like mimetic. It's like there are things that people can say maybe 2 weeks early, and it doesn't really catch. Then 2 weeks later, the same thing or even a little bit more radical, someone says it and it's just the right timing. And it just
Hmm.
gloms on, and then it's just moved. The Overton window is moved, and suddenly everybody's walking around with shirts that have knives on them that's saying protect trans kids, and pink and baby blue, like as if like they're walking around in like this is a nursery. It's insane. And then you kind of become just, and then suddenly you're in New York, and you're in Union Square, and there are thousands of people there holding pink and blue flags, and they're screaming to protect trans kids. And let's say you're a passerby and you're like, what's going on? And they're like, NYU Langone or whatever, however you pronounce it, they're not giving mastectomies to teenagers, or they're not providing puberty blockers. And it's like, wow, how did we get here? But I think that it's happening on the right as well, that it's like the more radical, the more outside the box. I think this is what people are talking about mostly when they talk about quote unquote woke right, which I don't really like
Hmm.
that term, but is like that is that mirror image of it. It's like that postmodernism where it's like we can just reconstruct or deconstruct, like, hey, you think you knew what this was about, but like let's rethink Hitler, and let's rethink who was right here, and Churchill, and all of these things. And oh, and the more outrageous, the more it catches on and latches on. Oh, Macron's wife is really his brother or his father, or who, whatever the hell. It's those kind of things, I think, that's mirrored
Yeah.
there.
Well, we're at about an hour here. What do you think?
I think this is a good place to wrap up. I do. Do you have any
Hmm.
more thoughts about this?
I they're still forming.
Yeah.
They're still forming.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't even know what to say about this. There's no doubt in my mind that another young man or young woman who's been through transition is going to do another shooting. There's no doubt in my mind. Um, it seems like there's a confluence of all of these different threads that get tied together when one of these events happens. And I really worry that what is next is that the populist right makes hay out of this in such a way that some of the fears that have seemed so overblown and stupid from the trans community, that some of them might begin to manifest. That's one of the things that I'm worried about.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm worried about that as well.
I just I can't see anything good happening from it.
I'm with you. Well, thanks for chatting today. I like talking to you. It's nice sometimes to have this little intimate chat with one-on-one. Um, I hope that listeners got something out of it and enjoyed it, and I'd be interested to hear what they say in the comments about this topic because
Yeah.
there's a lot here to it. I'm watching the US Open. That's my non-gender thing. Everybody knows that. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people know I like tennis. That's right now. So that's pretty much my life these couple weeks. Corey, what do you have going on? Are you still doing
Have there
The Wardley thing? The Wardley, what
the
is it?
Wordly mapping? Yeah,
Wardley
no, I don't
mapping.
think anybody commented on that
No,
at all.
somebody did. They said they
Did
watched
they?
like a YouTube video or something like that. Yeah. Or
I
maybe
need to go find that. Yeah,
yeah.
it's
What else do you have? Non-gender.
well, I was just going to bring up, it might be gender related, probably is, but I was going to say you and I should pitch our other podcasts since we are co-hosts on two different podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
I do Hetero Dorks with Nina Paley. I think
Mm-hmm.
we're publishing 176 or 177 this week, which is pretty great. We're on the threshold of 200 episodes, which not very many podcasts reach.
That's so great.
And you have a brand new one.
Yeah, so I've started up with Maud Marin, who's the Manhattan DA candidate, and she was actually a guest on this podcast a number of weeks
Mhm.
ago. And then Daniel Eid Friends is a political commentator and a senior studying journalism and I think political science at Syracuse. Really smart,
Mm.
cool guy. So it's like three generations, three New Yorkers, talking about US politics and culture. A lot of New York focused stuff, but definitely not just that. So yeah, that started a few weeks ago. Yeah, The Third Rail is the name
The
of that
third
one.
rail.
Hmm.
All right.
So yeah, all right. Well, Corey, thank you. Have a great week. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you all soon.
Bye bye.